Hello, everyone, and welcome to the newest installment of 808s and Beefake. This time, the major's over, and we decided that instead of jerking off Astralis for the millionth time, we're going to do what all great content creators do, and we're going to talk about bad things, because people react strongly to negativity. So, there are three teams that we both agreed were probably the most disappointing at the major, whether that's in terms of bombing out earlier than they should have or totally underperforming with the level of talent that they had. And those three teams are going to be NRG, FaZe, and Team Liquid. So let's start with NRG. NRG went 0-3 in the new Legends stage, the second round of the major, the round of 16. And they lost a best-of-3 series to Complexity, a roster that pretty much everyone knew were just sticking together for the major. They were a dead team. If they went out 0-3, they were probably going to blow it up because they would have to go through the minor again. Like, there's no point in saving those players. But NRG collapsed, and they lost to Complexity in the series. So, what went wrong for Complexity? Sorry, what went wrong for NRG?
I mean, more or less everything. Because, before I went to go, on the HLTV stats to do notes for this, I was like, oh, let's see what their map pool's like. And it's like, oh, yeah, they didn't win a map. So it's like 0%, 0%, 0% win rate on every single map they played. It was a bizarre the way that they sort of fell apart because they didn't lose a single map going through the minor or the main qualifier. Though to credit them, there weren't too many teams that contest them. Like, they did play Furia, who I think are an interesting up and coming team, but there wasn't anyone who was overly good. I can kind of understand losing to Nip and a Vanguard because they were close, but the Complexity game was absolutely horrific. Like, it's completely inexcusable in any way for a team who's top 10 pushing for top 5. In the context that they made a roster move immediately after that I think was happening regardless. I think if you didn't have that queued up, you had to at least make one move, because there's this narrative that gets pushed that NRG, like, oh yeah, they get there, they fuck it up, and the next time they'll be good. But just the way they went out was disgusting, because that it's hard to even assess how good they are at particular things, because when you look at that, especially that cash map against Complexity, they were terrible. Like, they completely capitulated. Like, watching back that very last round was one of the worst things I've ever seen, where they lose a 2-on-4 to, I think it was like Shazam, and I don't even remember who the other guy was, where like they look terrified to fail. They're not making any decisions, and they're just like hiding away, and he just runs in and kills them all. It's like the Counter-Strike wasn't good. No one was really asserting themselves. They didn't look confident. Like, they didn't look like a top 5 to 10 team. Like, if anyone else plays Complexity, if they're gonna lose, it's because they just got their dicks out and went for all the fights, and it didn't pay off in the end. But with NRG, it's beyond choking. Like, mentally, they look awful.
It was really weird. I went back and started to watch some of this series. I watched like the first like 10. I watched like the first like 10 or 11 rounds of that Nuke game, and they had honestly, to start out, they had a really good T side. Like, they were taking a bunch of map control. They looked really composed and knew what they were doing. They were trade fragging effectively, and I don't remember watching the Nuke game, but I remember watching the Cash game. And that Cash game, you're right, it was despicable. Like they were so scared. Like, the only bright spot for NRG, I think, is that Breeze was good like through both maps. So like, at least they had a consistent player. But Ethan was dog shit on
He had a
Nuke.
great line.
Yeah, Ethan was dog shit on Nuke, and then Cirque was even worse on Cash. Like, if Cirque really wants to buck the notion that he's an onliner, he's got to show up at the major. And like, to be fair, he did pretty well on Nuke, but man, he was abysmal on Cash.
I think he's the guy that they have to have a really difficult conversation about, because it's similar to what you've got with Rops or a lot of young players, where you take a chance on them and they've got a very high ceiling, but as soon as they start having poor performances, you don't want to kick them, because you don't want to be that team that kicked him before he went to, like, I don't know, like Cloud9 or Mouse Sports or something, and then became like a really, really good star player. But the my problem with Cirque right now is he's not looking good for the most part. Like he's been in a slump for a fair while, and he seems to have really really bad uh, mental issues in the game because he was really bad at the major, and he did little to nothing in that series against Complexity, and but you do have to keep in mind that he is very young, and you wouldn't throw in the towel yet, but that's definitely a narrative to keep in mind on is because you can't keep him in there forever if he's playing the AWP, which is one of your most important roles, and he's still not really getting much production out of it. Because I don't know, 'cause when I look throughout the team, everyone else on that team gave me something besides like actually no, Fugly even had some moments, but he's not a great player.
I mean, that's the
But
reason they
he's the
replaced
one
him.
player on that team who didn't really give me anything at this major to be excited about.
Yeah, I. The problem is whenever we talk about players with high ceilings and high floor and low floors, you generally want them to be a rifler because at least if you have a relatively stable player and you're putting that much economic investment in him in the game, it's not going to bite you in the ass. But like when Cirque shits the bed, it bites them completely in the ass. Especially since they're a team that wants to get nades, they want to get utility because they need that to set up their tactics.
So one of the weird things about it, I think, is I don't really understand the veto that NRG did, because if you're the better team, the general accepted rule, unless you're a Swedish team, I guess, is that you're going to
Well,
you try to
timeout.
pick into sort of the middle of your map pool where they're quite weak, and they picked Nuke, which NRG are a good Nuke team, but Complexity are a pretty shit team, but one of their better maps is Nuke, which I absolutely would not have picked into them.
Well, going back to that point about Swedish teams, it's really only Swedish teams led by exist. Let's be fair here.
I don't know, Fnatic have had some pretty bad vetoes recently.
Yeah, and who's leading them?
Or I mean, sorry, Nip rather.
Yeah, that's fair. Maybe it's just the ghost of exist. He's moving the mouse like.
Yeah, no, he's definitely the ringleader of it, but it's just giving. I don't know because there's this weird explanation sort of came out eventually where it was something to do with they scrimmed a lot against Complexity, which I mean, if that's a problem, don't be scrimming teams at the major, especially teams you can potentially end up playing, but whatever. They're saying like, oh, they knew how we were going to play on all these other maps as opposed to Nuke, which I don't think is necessarily a problem if you're the better team and they know a lot of your strats like that. It's definitely better if they don't know, but if you're a far better team, it shouldn't matter if they know what strats you're going to pull out. Like I don't think it matters usually for teams like Liquid, MIBR, Astralis when they're playing against a lesser team. Like everyone has watched every single round Astralis has ever played with this lineup. It doesn't matter but if you know what they're going to do because their execution is going to be so flawless that you can overcome it. And it doesn't have to be flawless to beat Complexity. So I really don't understand the veto they did, especially noting that picking Nuke into Complexity. That's a team who were like they did get absolutely destroyed, but Complexity were willing to let Nuke be the map in a best of one against Astralis, who are like better at Nuke than potentially any team's been at any map ever.
Yeah, it's there were a lot of layers to the failure. It's player underperformance, player like mentally crumbling in the moment, giving your opponent chances because ultimately upsets don't happen unless you give the other team chances. Like the better team wins unless they make mistakes. And there were just too many levels of mistakes for NRG to seemingly overcome.
No, which is why I'm actually pretty excited for this Tarek move. Because I think their main problem is a mental one. Because I don't think, like when we talk about teams a lot, you have your leader obviously and your in-game leader, but I don't see your classic leader of men kind of figure in this team because they're all pretty quiet guys. A lot of them very young, a lot of them very inexperienced. Their coach is pretty much purely tactical from what we've seen. So bring in a guy like Tarek. He's a guy who's very well liked within the scene. He's a very like he's not a player who gets shook, and he's one of those players that I think can calm a team down, can rally them in those difficult times. Whereas I really don't see that coming from anyone else on that team, because I don't think Daps is either like a very inspirational leader. He's very much about tactics.
Yeah, like every time you see Daps like talking like a setting like a podcast like on the like when the, I remember when they bombed out of the minor and he went on the fucking Peaker's Advantage podcast. He was just making a bunch of excuses. And like I don't like that's not typical of like a leader of men. Or a leader of men like acknowledges that they made mistakes and is really determined to fix them and get back at it. But he was like, man, we just had a lot of pressure, man. Like it was really hard for us. Like that's
I will give him the break that like he had either not slept in a week or he was just like zoinked out of his fucking mind, because he was lying back. He's like, bro, we just got a bad draw and it didn't happen for us, man. And like FNS would ask him a question, he'd be like, yeah, like it was a weird discussion. But I don't know if I was gonna. I guess the other thing with the Tarek move is if you when you do bring him in, he's not. I wouldn't say he's as good of an in-game leader as Daps, but he's definitely a capable one. Like he doesn't really get his due when it comes to talking about when Cloud9 won that major or any successes at that time when he was the in-game leader. But there's another route you can go if you consider Daps a problem on this team.
And honestly, like the way the team's set up right now, it's kind of perfect for Tarek to have like a little coup, because the way the Cloud9 lineup worked, he had a bunch of really skilled players. And this NRG team has a lot of skilled players. Like now it has Tarek, it has Ethan, it has Breeze. Like that's a really sick core to build around. If you're
I think Breeze is in the argument for being the best NA player right now.
Yeah, he's sick.
Like he's unbelievably good. And like, which is also great for me, because I honestly think it's like one of the very first episodes we ever did. I said something about people need to give Breeze a shot.
Yeah,
that all panned out.
just add that to another list of Tom was right.
Yeah, because I rate him so highly, and he's the one dude on that team that I'm excited about, because he didn't, even when everything was falling apart around him, he was still very, very good. Like I think he was sick on I think he was good on like pretty much every map they played, even though they lost.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was like I think he had like the second highest rating on Nuke, and then he had
when you look at his rating over the tournament compared to his teammates, he had a 1.19 rating. The second highest was Ethan with 1.06, and everyone else on the team had a negative rating.
Yeah, it was the same way with Hellraisers. Like Woxic and Issa were the only people positive, and like Hobbit, Angel, and who's their third player? Who's their next player?
The Fox.
Yeah, oh, fucking Dead Fox. Yeah, all three of those players were literally the three worst rated players at the major, and Issa and Woxic went positive. Like, it's just insane.
To be fair, and that move is completely backfired. Like, Hobbit is dog shit on this team. He was like bottom 10 players of this LAN, which is insane considering how good he was.
I think he was the third worst.
Wow, that's terrible.
Yeah, because Angel was the worst thing. They were talking about this on No Majors Club. Sorry, by the numbers. Like it was, I think it went Angel had like a 0.63, Dead Fox had like a 0.7, and then like how about like a 0.8 or a 0.9 or something like that. It was abysmal.
Fuck, that's so bad. That's why Woxic is fucking.
Hey! Save the content. Save the content. Save the content for the roster move episode. All right. I think
rip it. So.
Yeah. Let's kind of move on from NRG, because I think we both want to wash that vomit out of our mouths and try.
Fuck this team for wasting our time. Actually, can we say like people are so lucky there weren't more upsets in that group stage, because they would be the most hated team in Counter-Strike for ruining everyone's pick'ems.
Dude, they almost ruined mine.
Pick'ems, but not everyone's. I only got through by 1 point because this piece of shit team couldn't put complexity to bed.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so like, we'll get to this in the next one, but Complexity are fucking awful. They were terrible, and they somehow won a best of three here. Like, fuck NRG. I would be completely done with this team if they hadn't just made a fantastic roster move that I don't know, maybe I'm clouded by recent events, but I feel like they were a bit fortunate that they were able to get a player with of the caliber of Tarek.
Yeah, I think.
Major MVP.
Haha. All right. Let's move to FaZe then. Oh,
The
FaZe.
Lakers did get LeBron, so
Yeah,
bad teams can get good players.
that's fair.
All right, let's go.
All right. FaZe. Oh man. Like, listen, we criticized Nico moving to in-game leader in our top 10 players of the year. And oh man, did that fucking criticism pay off for us. This was the major of us shitting on players and those takes working out and being completely justified. Because dear Lord, FaZe's fucking decisions in the mid and late rounds were awful. They were like that Cloud9 game, that game they played against Cloud9 on Cash, had some of the worst decision making I've ever seen at a macro level from a team. It was disgusting to watch.
Yeah, because I think you're in there for a bit. Because I was like, oh, I streamed myself watching some of the demos, and that cash map, like I was just losing my fucking mind because I was so angry at both teams because at least you can kind of understand it with Cloud9 save a stand-in and the roster's not set and there's all these moves coming and going, but both those teams look like they were just playing FPL. It was terrible. Like that's my big problem with FaZe is I can't remember who said it, but someone in an interview said essentially that like people they were asked like, oh, how's FaZe looking in scrims recent games since they've made this minus Carrigan plus a Dren, but most importantly Nico to in-game lead, and they go they're way less scary because they just kind of do stuff is the way they put it, and that's how it feels to me because when I look at this team they don't have a plan. They don't have a game plan. They don't really have a plan in a lot of rounds. It just looks like they either have one goal and like they have their, or a better way to say is maybe they have a plan for the round in the sense like we're going to go here and do this, but it's not the expansive like fucking butterfly effect style shit that the top teams have now where it's like we go and do this, if this happens we do this, like they don't seem to have any protocols. It looks rather ironically it looks rather aimless when they have as much aim as you could imagine. That's a terrible joke, but yeah, they look terrible. I don't know what to say about FaZe. Like this is the biggest waste of talent I have ever seen because you're looking at like legendary, like he has unbelievable players in this team, Nico, legendary players, like Hall of Famers, and they look like a fucking tier 2. They look what you'd think Hellraisers should be.
Yeah, it's so upsetting. Like you'd think fucking if Nico had like just like 2 pinches less of ego, he fucking they would have kept Kerrigan, they would have gotten rid of like Olaf or Rain or some shit, and they would have tried
Or if
this
you just
again.
listen to Yanko or someone.
Yeah,
Because
like,
surely this isn't what Yanko is. Yanko doesn't have the. I think if Yanko got his chance to have like executive control over this whole team, I think he'd be so much better. Because just hearing him talk about Counter Strike, like I can't believe that this is him with control.
it's not. I honestly I kind of wonder if Yanko's a little fearful because of his experience in MIBR, where obviously in like every Counter Strike war, like the players are gonna have more say just because of the nature of the game. It's kind of like basketball. Like the roster's small, like individual player, like superstar players like Nico are a lot harder to come by than coaches. And I wonder if Yanko like is kind of playing it a little safer, just because like FaZe will kick him if Nico's unhappy because like without Nico, FaZe is kind of in a shitter because Guardian's gonna retire soon. Rain's not the same player he was at the beginning of 2018, and Olaf's
Swedish scene is screaming for Olaf to come back. Like,
yeah.
because he could like legitimately Olaf walks into whatever team he wants in Sweden. He could even go to Mouse Sports if he really wanted. Like, even though he was terrible at this LAN.
Yeah.
But yeah. No, I forgot what I was gonna say. But yeah, I will like they still made legend status, which is good. Like it's not like I guess it could have gone worse because I'd consider NRG to some degree. I was more hopeful for them than FaZe heading into this, and FaZe outperformed them. But Navi were absolutely for the taking here, and they weren't able to sort of get across the line. Like I picked Navi to win it just because I think they're more organized. But in terms of a team this good with bare organization, you should be able to go and take advantage of the fact that you have two terrible players on Navi anywhere on the map at any time. I remember what I was going to say, which is looking back to a lot of the stuff that came out of MIBR when Yanko was in charge, like it seemed like he did want to have a lot of control over the team, like the way they were organized out of the server, like the preparation, like essentially their schedules, that sort of thing. He wanted to have a lot of input in that. And I think the thing is, he's come into these teams thinking he's going to be Greg Popovich, and again, he finds out that he's actually Tyronn Lue, and he doesn't have any fucking input over what these teams do.
Yeah, I hope that's not the case in FaZe's case. I hope that's not the case like in FaZe, because I think Yanko's a really really smart dude. I think he's got a lot of great ideas, and I don't know if he'll be able to implement them in this team, even if he has
I don't think there's any chance. Like
yeah.
I don't think you can wind Nico's neck in.
Yeah,
Like,
even
no.
the crazy part is like he has a really good relationship with Nico too, because like they used to play on the same team. He was his in-game leader for a while. Like he like even like when he was an analyst, like he was always talking with Nico and pulling for FaZe. But
Oh yeah, you could see like sometimes he would be talking, you'd be like, that's Nico's talking, isn't he? Like when he picked like FaZe to beat wherever the top team was constant. But I think that's kind of burned him a little bit as well, because you do think you're going to a team like, oh yeah, like he has this reputation, he's got these problems at the moment, but you know he's my mate. Like if I come into this team, we can get on. I can bring him round. I don't know if he's quite realized that Nico's become the monster that he has.
it's such a shame too, because like Nico's one of the most fabulously talented players to ever play. And like if he could just fit in a little bit. Like he doesn't have to become a Zipnix. He just has to fit in a little bit, and he could become an all-time great player. Like fucking Simple's in a dogshit system, and he's fitting in. Like he's not a toxic motherfucker. He's not asking to be in-game leader. Like he understands that he's better suited, like just being a superstar player.
It comes down to, so we don't have the infrastructure that we do in sports, where the idea behind most sports teams is, when you get a coach in, you buy, like the concept is you buy in 100% on the team, and yeah, he can lose the locker room, yeah, you can fire him because he's not getting the results, yeah, maybe his tactics are bad, so you fire him for that, but at least for a period of time, everyone buys in, and usually they're gonna pick the manager or the head coach. They're gonna put faith in him and pick him over the star player a lot of the time. Whereas in Counter Strike, and it's not like it doesn't make sense for this to happen, you're always gonna pick your superstar player, like every single time. And Nico knows that. Like he knows there's no fucking FaZe without him, so they'll never pick anyone over him. He's like the dead fox of FaZe, where yeah, if he goes, what's the point, you know?
Yeah. Except for real this time though. Not like in the most
Players
horribly
just
funny
lie
thing.
and quit longers, dude. Come on.
It's the internet.
Just make things up.
But oh man, like I can't stomach it, and like the funniest thing is like fucking Yanko's tweeting about, oh, like we need to get an in-game leader. Like there's so many good ones out there. It's like you're not gonna fucking pick one though, are you? Like you're just gonna let Nico run the show because like if you don't, you're gonna get fired.
Yeah. Oh well, the thing I saw from him, I think he was being sarcastic in a tweet or something about like someone's. No, because as Wallaby Beetle was talking about how teams continually undervalue in-game leaders, and like fragging over team structure, and Yanko was just like, yeah, because there's so many in-game leaders out there available. I mean, kind of like, I mean, you just kicked fucking. Oh, he didn't, but the team just kicked Carrigan. It would have been the perfect in-game leader. Chris J's available. You could go, like, if this wouldn't really work, you could go get MSL. could go get a bunch of these guys who are like, I think you could bias them out of some of these lower teams, take a risk on them, but they're not going to do that. They're just going to keep doing this shit where they want to pick up who's the most skilled player we can get. Nico should be the in-game leader because we can't tell him no. It's just disappointing. Because the other thing is, people forget, but this team, so they lost to Renegades and Avango. This team was 1-2 in the group stage. There was a very real threat of FaZe going out in groups here.
Yeah, I was an idiot. Picked him on my pick'ems and was like, man, they're going to fuck me, aren't they? He just barely did it, though. Still Diamond voice.
Because the other thing with them is, like, I hated that after the series they had with Complexity, which was way too close. I forget his name, but the coach of Complexity comes out and like, why can't people stop telling us that we're fucking bad and this and that sort of thing when we took these teams close, deserve a bit of credit. It's like, mate, the reason that they tipped this fucking series over is because on Dust 2, the last fucking 4 rounds of the game, Nico pushed mid and got a free kill every single time. It was never traded, it was never prevented, and yeah, Nico's incredible, but good teams you can't abuse like that. You can't abuse like a top 10, top 5 team in that way.
Like fucking Navi wouldn't even let that happen, and we criticize them all the time. Like they're an incredibly flawed team, but like Nico's not gonna run down fucking mid every round. He's just not gonna do that.
Like you can't have credit for Ricky like running through a choke point and doing some retarded shit because FaZe were doing some even more retarded shit on the other side of the choke point and die to it. Like, it just bummed me out watching Complexity because I don't mean to pile on Ricky, but Ricky is one of those players where the way I described him is the way he aims, his technique in the game isn't a technique where on a long enough time scale or you level up his fucking stats if it's a sports game or whatever. Like you don't improve in that style and eventually become a really good player. It's the style that someone uses where they're just shit and there's not much else they can really do about it. So they just kind of like the way he aims and moves around a map is hideous. You don't see a good player do an improved version of that.
It's like,
and that's why it bums me out because this team's just fucking bad. Like Stanislaw looked really fucking good at this LAN, but like most of this team outside of him and Shazam, honestly, like I'm just so fucking out. And they nearly beat FaZe.
I really don't want to talk about FaZe anymore. Like until they get a real fucking, until I get someone who can like crack the whip, rein these fucking players in, it's just not gonna happen. And listen, I'm a huge stars first guy, like especially in this game. Like you need stars to win in Counter-Strike, and the problem is like the stars just have too much power, and I feel like that's never the case. Like it's just too much now. It's comically too much, really. Like it's
gone rampant.
Yeah, it's to the point of absurdity.
I don't know how much the other stars want this. It's hard to sort of measure that, but like Nico is just going to get whatever he wants at any point because he's a top 3 player in the game. But it's like, I think he might be a player where you have to have a very specific structure around him because he will potentially take over because like, yeah, and like you're saying, even Simple doesn't do this, but like if Device tomorrow comes in and goes, I want to kick Glaive, we're going to bring in Config, me and Dupree are going to co-in-game lead, like Zonic just slaps him across the face and shut the fuck up. Like, it's not happening.
That's a funny joke, Deva. Get in line. Eat your
fucking speak again without being spoken to. Just...
Get in line, heat your Soylent paste. Let's get on with it.
Get back in the fucking room, do the promotion with Ninja, and keep getting my fucking money.
Man. Dude, if Astralis do a commercial with Ninja, I'm out. This team's dead. This team's dead to me. Dude. Ugh. All right, the last
I
team,
always said Device and Dupree, much like the double towers or whatever it is of Counter Strike.
the Twin Towers.
Yeah, whatever the fuck that Fortnite place is called.
Oh, Tilted Towers.
Yeah,
Oh
that.
God. All right, last team. Last team we're gonna talk about is Team Liquid. Oh man, dude. I watched a lot of demos on Team Liquid. I watched two demos in their series against Mouse at ESL New York, where they lost the final when they had Taco. And then I watched the two demos against Ents on the same maps. They're sacrificing a lot of their strengths for Stewie here. Particularly on Mirage. Do you before I get into demo rat shit, do you have anything just general to say about this?
About do you mean about the way that Stewie's in, or?
Just like your general thoughts about Team Liquid right now, because I've got a lot of specific instances that I want to talk about.
I mean, may as well get into it because I have a lot of stuff to say as well. So
Alright.
I'd say just bring up your thing because I probably agree with most of it because I'm very unhappy with the way they've added Stewie. It's not necessarily a bad plus move, but the way they've pulled him into this team is rather nonsensical.
Yeah. All right. Let's start with Mirage. So they've taken Twist, for my money, their best player, or at least the player with definitely the most upside, and they've stuck him on fucking B, man. Listen, as a B Mirage player on the site, your job is to just stay alive and be fodder for the cat player. And the cat player is Nafly. And back when they had Taco, that was totally fine. Because Taco would either just die straight away or he'd stay alive, he'd set up a crossfire with Naf, and they'd do really well on that site. The problem when you introduce Twist is, Twist wants to take fights. Twist likes to sit in more open angles, take straight up gunfights and win them. The problem is if you do that on B site and you die, you give up the site and you can't retake it. It's really hard to retake. The other problem is teams can totally avoid B. Their entire strategy can just be avoid B, just go A, and Twist is completely out of the game. He's just playing rotate strike the whole time.
NAF 2 to some extent now, so you've taken your two best players out of the match.
But that's not all. When you put Stewie on A site, Stewie and Twist play that A site almost entirely antithetically. Twist likes to play back towards the spawn. He likes to play ticket booth a lot because he can just take long range fights, which he's really good at. And if he gets smoked off, he just waits for the retake because Team Liquid are
Also,
one of
they're an insane retake team.
Yeah, they're sacrificing one of their huge strengths by letting Stewie play way up close. Stewie likes to play in Palace. Stewie likes to play under Balk. Stewie likes to play default a lot more. And by making sure Stewie can make more aggressive plays, he might be able to shut down a round way earlier than Twist could. But you're sacrificing your retake ability, which is the biggest strength of Team Liquid on the CT side. I feel like they've flipped how they play Mirage on its head, and I think that really weakens them as a team. And that's kind of why they lost to Ents. Stewie made a ton of plays on A, but if he died, when he got over aggressive and just died straight up, they lost the round because they don't have that fifth player they need for the retake who's alive.
Because I agree with the assessment of B really hardcore. Because you look at in the teams of the world who plays B sites, it's your Zipex, your Taco, even I don't know why the fuck I know this, but Dead Fox plays B site on Mirage. You put your guy it usually ends up being your worst play because it's usually your support guy has impeccable utility usage, very good timing, great communication, and his job is delay, get some damage in, stay alive, just be a real pain in the ass. And that's not Twist's game at all. One of the most terrifying things was that quote that came out where he was like, I don't see myself as a star player on this team. And the fucking terrifying thing about that is that says that not only is Stewie coming in and getting potentially whatever roles he wants, but Twist is 100% fine and sort of complicit in giving all these roles over to Stewie. So if he's not if he's not really going to give any pushback, which I mean maybe he does, but this indicates that he isn't. Stewie's just going to roll in and be the focal point of this team when you really shouldn't be. And it's the same shit we were saying when they picked him in. It's like, he is potentially a good player in what he can do on usually T side, a bit on CT, like he can take Palace or that sort of thing. But he is that guy who I need around right fucking now, and he goes and he gets it. But it doesn't really make sense when you consider what else they have on this team, because like there's not much he can do that you're not going to get from Twist or Naf. So like if you were going to bring him in, or Elige too, like potentially you would have had to kick Elige or something like that, because now they're a very top heavy team. Like they're really, really unbalanced, and I don't see anyone well filling Taco's roles, because that was always the question: is can they replace what Taco brought to the team? And they really can't, because just Twist isn't that player, and he shouldn't be forced to try and be that player.
I think that what Sui's done on Inferno though is even worse, and it's even more his fault, because here's the thing. Twist lost his spot on Mirage. Like, he's forced into a role he doesn't normally play. So, like, I don't really expect him to do as well. That's fine. Basically, everyone else, like, on Inferno, rather, everyone else basically has their role, or the new role that they have, they're really good at in the small sample size they've had. So, on Inferno, Elige used to be their B anchor player. Like, he used to just sit there. Now he's on A helping Twist. Twist from, like, pit or from site. And you know what? The game that they played against ENCE, Elige was really, really good at that. He had great chemistry with Twist. Like they had his aggressive plays worked out really well for him consistently too, which was surprising. Meanwhile, on B, Stewie basically got the same role that he had in Cloud9. He's the B anchor player now. Naf's still the rotator. He and Naf have like no fucking chemistry when they take banana at all. Every time that Stewie does tries to be super aggressive down banana when they don't have like the bottom of the banana smoked, or they don't know that a player's like pushed up to like the cubby or like right next to the wall, he basically just dies untraded in untradeable positions because he doesn't communicate with Naf. They haven't like tried to set that up very well, or he just fucking pushes where Car used to be, and just gets fucking spammed through the wood. Like, it's so infuriating. Whenever they lost A to ENCE, it took X7 getting the fucking entries of his life to break that hold. On B, Stewie just died. Just died for no reason. And they just lost the site because either Naf had to fall back with like the op or something, and it's basically impossible to hold B unless you hit nut shots with the op. Or he just fell back and they kind of just gave up on the round.
Because I can conceive Stewie as like a B player in the sense that, you know, you can play short on Mirage or potentially like a B rotator, but B Inferno is such a specific role. Like, you look at the fact that Astralis play usually, like sometimes they put Magisk there if they want to try something, or Device because you rotate your opera around, but usually they're going to play Glaive and Zipex there. Your two least gifted players in terms of technical ability, because that site is so much about having good nades, good timing, making the right decisions. And I don't really conceive Stewie as very much that player. Like, Naf can be that player because I think he's a very smart player when he's on his game, but yeah, it doesn't make a ton of sense to put Stewie there. And yeah, I do agree that it is somewhat of an upside that they've moved Elige over to A, because I thought he was really quite good at this major. After maybe a couple like murmurings of people saying like maybe they want to get rid of him because he's was
good but not great,
one of their star players, but he's not on the same level as like Twist or Naf. But I guess that's the upside, is you might have found a very good role for Elige. But yeah, it's when you watch specifically their CT sides, Stewie kind of sticks out a bit, or it sticks out in the way that a player's been displaced, unfortunately.
Yeah, I have a little. The only gripe that I have about their T side on Inferno, I didn't really watch their Mirage T side because it was just such a fucking clusterfuck. Like, there didn't seem to be any structure to their T side of Mirage right now.
It's definitely their CT sides that have suffered.
Yeah, but like their T side Mirage, the only gripe that I have about it is that like Stewie entering, like Stewie making, like Stewie being more of an entry player down banana whenever they take it. That's fine. Like I don't think you lose that much when Stewie's doing that with Elige instead of Naf. Like Naf just kind of sits back a little more, and I don't really mind that much. But like one of the things that you've done is that you've kind of taken Taco away from the other side of the map with Twist, because now Twist basically takes apartments alone every time instead of having Taco there to set him up, help him clear shit. And then like generally for their A takes, they'd send their 3 players out mid, and then Taco would come out balcony. Sorry, Taco would come out boiler, and like he'd be the first guy like generally that would get killed there. But then like Naf would come around the corner, or Leech would come around the corner, and just trade the guy with porch. And now that Twist is just coming out of apartments alone, pretty much at a balcony, it's basically kind of up to him to find more space. And I think that makes their A hits suffer a little bit more.
Because it's the thing that did like trigger me a bit is because like I was saying before, when I consider Stewie the guy who can go and get you around when he's meant to, like where the fuck was that when they threw a 15-8 lead on Inferno? They had 10 T rounds and still lost the game.
Yeah. It was a bad look.
Because it just looked like Ents got on a roll and Team Liquid's heads completely. When I try to look at that series overall, one of the things that really confused me a bit is, so after the quarterfinal, Twist gave that post-match interview. They didn't give any interviews after that because I think they were just didn't want to, understandably. But Twist gave that interview where he said something on the lines of like, "Oh, we feel that we did all this preparation and then we overthought it." And this is after when the group draw came in. He I can't remember who it was, but there was some sort of clip or something of one of their players saying that they didn't know a huge amount about Ents, and obviously then they've still got like 5 days or something to do their research. But to me, it didn't look like a team who did all the research. It just didn't work in the server. It looked like a team who underrated Ents and thought like, if we just go out and we play our game and we play aggressive, like we can take fights, we can expose the skill deficit, which is definitely inarguably there, but it just didn't work at all. Like the amount of times, so for example, Naf got one entry kill, like one first kill of the round in the entire series, and the amount of times on Mirage that I saw him going for like a solo contact play and then just blowing up in his face and doing nothing was insane. Like he would just try to walk out A main and get a kill, and it's like he Ents are too good to fall for that consistently.
Yeah.
Also, like another interesting thing in the kill matrix is Alu only died once by AWP to Nitro and 3 times to Naf, but he killed them a fair few times. I forget the exact number, but essentially the AWP matrix was very much in favor of Ents.
And like I think we both criticized Team Liquid as a team that doesn't really have the opping presence you'd want from a team that's contending to be number 1 in the world. And like you'd think even with these deficits, like Alu's not an elite opper. Like surely you can win the op duel with hybrid players in this instance if they're that much more skilled. But it didn't really happen, did it?
No, yeah, it's very disappointing because it's like it's not a terrible team when you look at it from the outside, because they're playing at a very good level, and they've got a really good starting point to improve. Because like naturally you have a shitload of talent, you can be still really good without making roster moves. You just have to sort of reassess how you want to play, how you want to use particular players. You can still come out with a contending team. It's just in the face of all the unreasonable things that were said about them after that iBuyPower tournament, this is a terrible result. Like they should have absolutely destroyed Ents. Like they should have been able to just fucking moonwalk straight into the semis, and instead they got 2-0'd. Like it wasn't even close. And this was on Ents picking Mirage, which has historically been a very good map for Team Liquid. And then losing your own map pick after a 15-8 lead is pretty inexcusable.
Yeah, like as you said, like that they didn't do that much research on Ents makes sense, because they looked like a team that were looking ahead rather than in front of them.
Or maybe I think it might have been a case of just watching a million demos in those like 5 days, but not having a great handle on Ents as a team. Though I will say, I think Ents played better at this LAN than they ever have before, so you don't have a huge sample size, but it still shouldn't have mattered. You still should have been able to, even if they are playing different to how you've ever seen them before, you should be able to adapt. It's like people, like I think after the group stage, Pimp said something like Liquid are playing pretty much on the same level as Astralis, which I disagree with, but the assertion there obviously is like, yeah, they're close to Astralis, but when you look at what Astralis did to this Ents team, like they obliterated them on Inferno, and they were very good on Train, which is Ents' best map, dominated them, won very convincingly in that 2-0 series, whereas Team Liquid just they I don't know, they realistically, like when I look at, for example, the Navi series against Ents, Navi probably should have won that. They probably deserved to win that series, but Ents just sort of cheesed their way through, and that's fine for an underdog, especially. That's still very admirable, because winning in any means as an underdog is still huge. But Team Liquid were comprehensively outplayed in that series in pretty much every facet of the game, and that is what is horrific for me.
Yeah, I can't condone the decisions that Team Liquid have made with regards of structuring their team. I think they're gonna have to take a long look in the mirror here if they want to like get back to the level they were at last year. Because right now, like the way they're playing, they're not at that level. Like they're like from a pure like on paper move, like skill for skill, like they should have gotten better. But it's very clear that the roles aren't lining up right now. The chemistry is not there, and it's gonna. I don't know if it's gonna take time or just the personnel fit's just never gonna work because.
Because they might be the most skilled team in the world,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
for context. But yeah, it's
I think they are. Like I think that like I don't think Adren's the player that he used to be. Olaf's not the player that he used to be. Like I think that Liquid have overtaken FaZe in terms of just straight up man for man skill, and going out top 8 to a team that you should have absolutely beaten like 10 times out of 10 it's a bad look.
because one of the things that I think maybe an undervalued concept in Counter Strike is pairings. Like for example, when you see a 2v2, 2v3, and you look at the two players and you think like, how is this gonna go? And I think they have sort of fucked up a bunch of those pairings because, like you're saying, there's a real lack of chemistry between some of these players. And like, yeah, some of them played off each other well, like you're like a Legion Twist, but other times it looked like it looked like they'd not played together before, like particularly Stewie with a lot of these guys.
Yeah, part of me also wonders if Sui after the whole MIBR debacle where he really got shafted. Part of it was his own fault because like he knew what he was getting into. Like he knew they weren't going to give him any star roles with Fur and Cold Zero on the team. But at the same time, like I think that he kind of wants to take back like his place in Counter-Strike again as like a star player, and I don't think the Team Liquid needed that.
He's sort of come back to the NA scene, but the NA scene's moved on and grown without him, and now he's kind of like, I don't know, it kind of feels like he's a little bit washed up. It's like if, for example, like Gareth Bale's playing for Real Madrid, if he comes back to the Premier League, he's probably not going to be like, he's injury prone, that sort of thing, but he's not going to be a leading player anymore. Like he'll be a very, very good player, but like times have changed. You have to sort of, it seems like he's come back in and he wants to be exactly what he was on Cloud9 in the good days, but that's not what Team Liquid need.
Yeah.
And it's not all on him, it's on Team Liquid trying to make him sort of that kind of player. It's, yeah, I don't know, I think this team has to do a lot of soul searching in terms of what they want to do with Stewie, what they want to do with all their other players. And I think if they continue in the way they have now, there's a ceiling.
Yeah. I mean, depending on what depending on what moves the other teams make, like depending on what Mouse Sports do, depending on, hopefully, dear fucking God, what Na'Vi do to change their roster. This team might be like top 5, and that might be their ceiling. Like, we might legitimately...
MIBR look like they're going to be a contender soon. Like,
Yeah,
MIBR looked really good.
Yeah, I'm like, Team Liquid might just be like Mouse Sports last year, where they're good, but they're not good enough for what they want to be. All right. Yeah, that's kind of where we sit after the major in terms of, how we feel about these 3 teams. The big disappointments, the flops, the bad and the ugly. Follow us on Twitter. We're making more awful takes that you can watch in real time